close the door and leave the light on. The morning light should be coming soon. Kick off your shoes and leave the winter and the pain it brings to you. Lay your head upon my shoulder, shut off your thoughts and clear your mind.
I wanted to talk about the construction and design of this retaining wall for this garden landscape. It's going to be a whole series of videos, instructional videos on how we put this whole thing together. The excavation, creating the terraced hillside, building the foundations, building this hollow block wall with reinforced concrete and steel, this natural stone wall over here, a ramped pathway. This is so you can get access to this lower backyard with wheelbarrows and lawnmowers and things like that. And the sort of patio area we created over here, because this was just a sloped mud hill before with collapsing retaining walls. Now you've got a nice flat space for setting up a barbecue or enjoying this area. We wanted to use this yellow brick because it matches the house that you can see in the background, so we've used it on the top of the walls. And we've used it to sort of create a border for this gravel ramp platform access point that goes around the corner of our wall. So you can get wheelbarrows and lawnmowers up and down from this height down to this height. Another feature of this terrace design was this treated timber border wall railing that we put in. It goes all the way up the fence line, wraps around here as a sort of safety rail guard for our pathway that goes down here. And this garden has got 2 levels to it, so we've got a natural stone wall over here to offset the level by about 200 mil. So it would make sense with all the levels we're creating with this wall. So we've got sort of a rough natural stone wall we've put together here that matches this dry stone wall that we put on the side of the staircase. So join me in this series of videos as we cover all the aspects to build all the things we've just talked about. The natural stone wall, the hollow block concrete wall, capping it with the bricks, the garden bed up here, the treated timber border on the other side along the fence line. I'll try and include all the steps and procedures necessary to bring this kind of project about.
Here's a preview of the 29 episodes we have covering this particular project. I've arranged them on a playlist so you can navigate them as needed. Big jobs like these requires a lot of tools and a lot of setup. After referencing our drawing we drew up earlier, set up a temporary block.
So we've transferred the measurement from the deck.
Double check with our tape measure.
Do a bit of demolition here. Take out this old lattice gate, pulling out all that old timber with rusty nails.
This one we have to keep positioning the leverage system higher up the post by hammering down the nails so it's safe for handling.
These are the Corellas going crazy there.
It took a lot of effort, but it was very satisfying when I finally got it out. The lower you can get to the ground, the better for this kind of work. The bigger the roots get, expose more roots, and the process continues. Digging out stumps like this can be hard work, and we just keep adding wheelbarrow loads to our dirt pile. There's a pre-existing concrete pathway that always makes sure you've got a good center of gravity and concrete with our wrecking bar. We just clear out the debris as we go. This section of the wall goes right behind this tree. Some people use chainsaws for this kind of work. We use our string and level to set pegs in the ground. Once this piece is level and screwed in, the form for this foundation contains steps in it.
So this will be the system that drains all the water that gets trapped behind the wall like in a dam. Pushing the gravel along this foundation.
The next process for these footings is to install the steel we need to reinforce the concrete in our foundations. We start this process by taking measurements of our trenches, prepare to cut the mesh with our grinder. We're ready to install them in our footings.
I'm going to put some plastic props underneath so they sit in the middle of the concrete.
Once we've got all the ingredients we want in the mixer, we empty it out into our barrow. It's not uncommon to have restricted access to people's backyards. We dump our concrete into this custom-built trough and using gravity on our side. Getting all this concrete into our foundation is a bit like managing a river system deep into our foundation. We just tap them in with our hammer to get them to the right depth so they're not all the way through the bottom of the concrete. This particular piece of formwork is a good example of how we pre-prepared it when we installed it with an angle cut so we could remove it easily in this stage.
A bit like unbuttoning a puzzle.
By using my hammer gently, we can tap these forms free from the concrete. We start by doing a rough layout. Using our plastic packers, we want to put cuts in here so the rebar can lay through. We have to cut the entire back out of this block.
A notch cut in here.
With everything washed clean to make sure we're getting everything to the right height. We gently add mortar into the hollow part of the blocks until we get it filled all the way to the top. This 2x4 is already cut to the exact length we want the width of this staircase to be. We put a stake in to lock it into that position. Double check with our square. We set this in place and then continue to join timbers on it to create the top step for the ramp. Pouring out this top threshold section that is the very top of the system and then all the way along the outside perimeter. We're adding a product that's called Bondcrete, Portland cement and sand on top to create the mix, to make it more manageable to pour into the forms. So we're just trying to get a thin coat of this specially mixed concrete. The form we've created contains the outside edge of our ramp system. Later we'll have to pour concrete for the inside edge of this ramp system. We've got to create a pathway on this platform that we've poured all our concrete for. So we have an access point to bring in the concrete for this form we're going to be building. And we want to be extra careful because this split face concrete block is going to be all exposed. The cornerstone is the key block. We want everything tight to this corner. We're aligning this corner block with the existing deck. We have to do cutouts on these bricks for engineering purposes. And we have to cut notches for the reinforcement bar to be able to fit between all the blocks. As I mentioned before, we're doing dry sets so there's no mortar gap between these blocks. I set one of the blocks hard up against the cornerstone. I just lay them tight up against each other and then double check that they're all level.
So this morning we're just moving a bit more block in. Just try and do that a piece at a time because I've only got so much room here to keep it on these pallets. This natural stone wall that ties into our block wall. We'll go through the whole procedure of how this came about.
Excavate an area so we can pour a foundation for this stone wall. I'm going to build a small form. We're just going to pour a foundation out as part of what's going to be holding up this hillside. So it has to have a lot of concrete and steel reinforcement to be strong enough to not fail.
We lay the stones up to the front of our form here to keep it flat as it goes up. Then we backfill it with concrete, add more timbers onto our formwork. Yeah, so we're going to level this.
Every time I move materials like this stone or timber, I use the opportunity for material selection.
The big one's really close.
This new mesh we're adding overlaps with the existing mesh. We add fine gravel into the cracks between the other stones. We need cube-shaped, block-shaped stones. These stones lay across the cracks.
We're just putting enough block in so it overlaps under our ground height. So we're going to go through the procedure of how we engineered that.
We need to expose the concrete foundation we poured earlier. So the underground part of this wall is all solid concrete, making sure the corner block's in the exact right position. All the blocks are lined up and plumb. We fill them with concrete. I'm adding rebar into the concrete to lock these blocks together.
Last week we got this corner set. Been putting all our steel in as we go. So this is our lower end of the wall, and today we're going to be working on the third course,
which involves laying all the blocks tied to the block next to it. They should be laying out flat and plumb on this course because they should be landing on the exact halfway point. Once all the blocks are laid up to the corner, we double check with our level. Now that we have this corner of the hollow block wall filled with concrete, we can continue on with the natural stone wall. We're adding a bed of our specialized concrete mortar mix to help lock the stones into the system. We're cutting up about 30 small pieces of reinforcement bar to tie our foundation into this hollow block wall. We're making sure we're tying them together extra strong in this application
to lock it into this backfilled concrete foundation.
We're going to be adding a large volume of concrete to this wall today. With this concrete all set and solid, we're ready to start laying the next course on the block wall. We start this process with a dry layout, just as we've done with each of these courses. The way these blocks are manufactured means they're not exactly the same. So when you lay out an entire wall length like this, things can fall out of alignment. Placing this corner block at the end of this row shows that the wall has gained 5 to 10 mil on our layout. We're going to correct this by shaving one of our blocks. We're starting our layout on the far end and working our way back to where the wall ends in its step configuration. And in this case, the property owner chose to have a more neat, finished look. That's technically the last block in this wall.
This morning we're going to pull off the form for this natural stone wall and see how she looks underneath. We put a bit of pigment in this concrete so it didn't stick out like horrible grey.
The stone layout looks quite random, but there's actually a lot of strategy and planning involved. The idea with this tile cement is to get enough on to get a nice tight sandwich in between the brick and the wall. Part of managing the process effectively is only sticking down small groups of bricks at a time. I use my wet sponge to clean off any spills as they happen. This end of the wall is where we went to all this trouble to make sure the natural stone wall and these bricks would segue together nicely. Building this retaining wall has created a central garden area, but we have a little more construction to complete the perimeter of it. I'm attaching the H-bar to the structural part of the deck to lock in these treated timber sleepers. We're leaving the other side open for the moment so we can remove plants and bring in rocks, dirt and gravel. Building dry stone walls is time consuming and can be fiddly. I'm starting with the excavation of 2 small trenches. I also want to dig down deep enough to the compacted clay. The gravel helps water pass underneath the concrete. I install a form for the other side of this trench and lock it in with timber braces so we can get a bed of concrete that's going to lie underneath it. We just keep adding concrete, agitating it in with our trowel. We disassemble our formwork the same way as we've done many times through this project. I'm using a tile cement product instead of mortar to stick these bricks down. To help keep things manageable, I work in groups of 5 bricks at a time. So after spreading out our mortar on the foundation, we butter the back of the bricks so we have extra adhesion to the whole system, and then continue laying the other bricks. As I move up the pathway, I constantly restage for each row of bricks I want to glue down. So the system I use is to always add a little more than we're going to need, and then remove the excess. So I lift it back out, add some more product, and then put it back in place. I just go back over them lightly with my rubber hammer. We're now ready for the final stage of this project, which is adding the golden path gravel.
This is the best part, is putting this top coat on. It'll start to look like a finished backyard, at least in this section anyway.
This is the last video episode for this particular project. Thanks for joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.